Hello and welcome to another Whiskey review with me, the Whiskey Novice. Thank you for joining me for what is review number 116, part 3 of a short series looking at some 10-year-old single malt Scotch whiskies. Thank you for joining me indeed. This time we are looking at this one, the Benromach 10-year-old Cask Strength. Now, before we go too much further, before the notes start rushing in, because I know what you're like, some of you, and they will, and they may. This is, I suppose, technically more a vintage than an age-stated whiskey because it doesn't actually have an age emblazoned on there anywhere. But it's distilled in 2019, distilled 2009, bottled in 2019. And when you're talking about the Benromach 10-year-old Cask Strength to anybody, this is what they're talking about. It's that vintage bottling. So, as I said, before the letters of complaint start coming in, as though it doesn't have an age statement technically stamped on it, we all know it as the 10-year-old Cask Strength. So there you go. So Benromach, they're a Speyside distillery owned by Gordon and MacPhail since 1993, and yeah, starting to come back. This is the old bottling. They've rebranded recently. So even this is starting a bit outdated, but we'll get to that later about batches, etc. Yeah, let's just focus on this for now, shall we? It is non-age statement, or non-age statement, non-chill filtered. There's no colour added, and it's bottled at an almighty 58.8% ABV. So it's a bit of a powerhouse, it has to be said. And it is matured in ex-bourbon casks and first fill sherry casks. So, what does it bring in the glass? Well, let's see, shall we? Woofed! It's quite the alcohol offensive. Initially, That ABV does like to slap you around a bit. But give it time, let it relax, and you get greeted nonetheless by dark, woody cigar smoke. Yeah. All the usual sherry cask trappings are there. The dried fruit, the raisins, sultanas, mixed pale, even yet again, I'm starting to get this more with sherry, where there's sherry finish or maturation, those glacé cherries, but all mixed in together, all mixed into that fruit cake thing. But the bourbon cask is there as well. Certainly, it's not all about the sherry here. The bourbon cask has its play. There are tangs of vanilla and caramel, and they're all in the background, but they're all there. There's a slight acidic sharpness and a slight thread of cinnamon running through it. But it's actually very well rounded, I think. For something bottled at 58.5, bottled at cask strength, this almost has a feel like it's literally just been poured out of the cask. You know, no barrier filtration, no nothing. This just, to me, has that woody, very natural feel about it. So the palate is, boy, there's that 58.8 again. Nice, sweet and sour delivery. It's dark in the middle, sharp round the outsides, and it kicks like a mule. Yep. I'm going to say if it is being dark, it's weird. It separates in the palate for me. And there's this real rich darkness runs right down the centre of the palate, and then this sharpness runs right round the outside. So, as I said, there's that bittersweet arrival, or sorry, a sweet and sour arrival, but there's also bitter tangs in there as well. But they don't hang around at the back of the palate. Like I find a lot of them, it separates, but it separates well. But there is a kick, a massive kick. It really kicks a mighty. It delivers a mighty wallop. But rather than, as I've found with a lot of them, that alcohol wallop, rather than converting it into just heat with this one, which I'm sure most of us have found with a lot of cask strength whiskies, if they are going to be an ABV offensive, if it's that alcohol that's just driving them, a lot of it's just converted into heat, and it's just a burn, and it requires then to be tamed or rested or whatever, just to try and calm it down enough for your palate. But rather than this converting it into heat, this just converts it into flavour, which I find mightily impressive. Cherry and chocolate. All that richness from the fruitcake that came in the nose is there in the palate. Rich wood again. More cigar smoke. There are lighter fruit notes. The apricot. Plum. It's a fleshy fruit. Juicy sort of fruit. And even that plum, this reminds me of plum pudding and brandy sauce. So it's got a Christmassy feel about it. And a very nice, pleasant Christmassy feel. Right at the very back, starts to go a little dry. And it's the woodiness, I think, that makes it feel a little dry, but it's no bad thing. Finish. Long, peppery, hints of cinnamon, and there's a citrusy feel right at the very back of it as well. It needs water. I think it needs water for it to calm it down. I added water, but I don't know if I like water in it, and we'll see why. Water turns up the sharpness in the nose. It starts to have a very old-fashioned kind of style of whiskey nose for me. And I find it quite hard to explain that one. Simply, and if you haven't had whiskey I'm going to say sort of early 90s even, prior to that, even older blends and stuff. To me, whiskey then had a different feel than it does now. But then there were older blends and stuff like that. There wasn't the same quality. And my palate has changed an awful lot. That palate that I'm talking about, that I had then, was very young, but this actually reminds me of something like that, where it was a much different feel then. Not a bad thing, it's just different. There are hints of blackcurrant and leather there as well. So it definitely calms down, becomes a little sharper, but still good, still good. Palate changes too. It's better balanced. It doesn't have that division anymore. It just comes as one rush. Yeah. And slightly sweeter. There's less attack. Still plenty going on, less attack. But there's also less experience with it. The flavours are still there. I'll just get back into I'll get into the finish and then come back. The finish loses a bit of flavour, keeps its length, becomes a bit hotter with the addition of water. I like this with water. I do, but I prefer it without water. I think the experience of this whiskey without water is better. It's more entertaining without water, if that makes sense. It just feels better without water. It feels like a good whiskey with water, don't get me wrong, but better without, in my opinion. I think it's just more fun without it. If I had a way of describing it, I know that sounds maybe a bit silly, but just it's a more intriguing whiskey without water. Yeah, this is the batch one. Okay, now as I say, they've rebranded and everything since this. This is pretty much a thing of the secondary market now. And if you're going that path, expect to pay quite a bit for it. The batch 4, the rebranded, is still available. So through batches 2, 3, they're probably the way of the secondary market now. I know the batch 4 is still available. And expect to pay around £60 for it. £60 for a 10-year-old cask strength of this calibre. And I'm gonna make sure that I add in of this calibre is good. I do think £60 for a whiskey of this calibre is good. It does have its age statement on there. I know you have to work it out, but it's there. So it's got everything. It ticks all the right boxes. It does. And it's just, it's got grip, it's got a lot of stuff going for it. So yeah, if you can get your hands on this for the right price, go with this one, because it's good stuff. But if you can't, and you do want to try the 10-year-old cask strength, then as I say, that batch 4 is still available from certain places. So we'll just move on at that. Yes, if you like this, I'm going to offer up a bottle which I don't currently have in my cabinet. There is one on its way, believe it or not. But post-Brexit, here, it could be on its way from 5 minutes down the road, but still have to come via Italy. So I'm currently waiting and have been waiting for some time for this one. Now, it wasn't the actual bottle that I'm going to... The bottle that's on its way to me isn't the same bottle as I had a sample of before, and it was only had a sample, but it was this, the Tamdhu batch strength, and I think it was batch 5. I think it was batch 6 on its way. It was batch 5 that I tried before. But this bottle of Benromach has been in my cabinet a while. I've been nursing it for a while because, as I said, it's the batch 1. It'll go eventually. So I'm nursing it. I'm trying to make it last. But I know when I had the Tamdhu batch strength, it reminded me of this, or it made me think certainly along the lines of this. The batch strength, I know, I don't, as I say, I don't have one at hand, but I know it's more expensive. But it's good stuff again. So if you like Benromach 10-year-old cask strength and you're looking for me to offer you up something else, when my bottle does eventually arrive, I will review it at some point, but I will suggest to you the Tamdhu batch strength, whichever batch you get. So there you go. That is the Benromach 10-year-old cask strength, and it is, as they say, a doozy. I will leave it there and see you next time with something a little different. Until then, thank you for joining me. It's always good to have you. Thank you very, very much to my patrons. If you wish to join that group, the details are, of course, as always, below. Till I see you next time, my friends, here's your good health. Cheers.
Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please click and subscribe to be notified of further content.